Добрий день всім.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ukraine Media Center at Ukrinform. I'm Atamanova, and now I'll briefly tell you about our schedule for today. At 12, we will have a special briefing of official spokespeople of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, special representatives including Hanna Mahler, Deputy Minister of Defense, Alexei Gromov, Brigadier General, Deputy Head of the Department of the General Staff of Ukraine, Alexei Natochi, Head of the Operational Staff at the Main Department of National Guard of Ukraine, Leonid Baran from the Department of State Border Protection of State Border Protection Service of Ukraine, as well as Alexei Sergeyev, Head of the Organizational and Analytical Support Department at the National Police of Ukraine. And we will discuss the following subjects: interim results of the first stage of the war and key tasks of the current stage of resistance against full-scale military aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. We'll discuss the defense of Mariupol, and we'll also discuss some relevant issues about Russian invasion. And right now in our studio, we'll have a briefing on a very relevant subject, which is demining of Ukrainian territory. And I'd like to invite our first speaker, Oleh Bondar, head of the organizational of Pyrotechnical work and Humanitarian Demining of the State Emergency Service. You're welcome. Good morning, everybody. Wishing everything, all the best and good health to all of you, and I will briefly tell you about our activities on demining the Ukrainian territory. One of the key negative results of Russian invasion in territory of Ukraine has been large-scale contamination of the territory and villages and towns with explosive items, including items which are prohibited by international conventions. The enemy has been using remote mining systems, cynically installing uncontrollable mines in the territory of towns and villages, and they leave behind them large quantities of very dangerous, purposely installed mining devices, explosive devices, which bring deadly threat to innocent civilians. Such items have been found in Kyiv, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and Luhansk Oblast. The total number of various mines, cluster, cassette items, and specially installed explosive devices has accounted for about 10% of all found explosive items. In order to ensure safety of civilians, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine has been working in a more active way to train the population about risks when explosive items are found. We constantly continue awareness campaigns among Ukrainians. Based on international experience, demining may take 5 to 10 years. After our armed forces liberate Ukrainian towns and villages, there are the following priority steps being made. First of all, we inspect the towns and villages, roads, and transport installations. Second, it's maintaining security of repair teams in electricity grids and water supply lines. Currently, implementation of those tasks has already enabled us to start step by step checking and demining the agricultural fields. We make maximum efforts in order to enable agrarians to run the spring sowing campaign. Currently, the key efforts of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine have been focused on checking the liberated territories in Kyiv, Chernihiv, and Sumy Oblast, as well as eliminating consequences of permanent shelling in towns and villages of Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and Luhansk Oblast. Every day, our people, our pyrotechnicians, take 2 to 2.5 thousand explosive items. Compared with the time before the full-scale invasion, the amount of work on demining in Ukraine has increased almost threefold. On the total, since the beginning of the war, the State Emergency Service has inspected about 20,000 hectares of territory, has taken and eliminated more than 1,000 mines and explosive items, including almost 2,000 of aviation bombs of various calibers. I have to say that the global community does not leave Ukraine alone with those challenges we have faced because of contamination of our towns and villages with explosive items. Many countries have responded to our appeal and are ready to bring their teams for demining in Ukraine. The State Emergency Service has been actively cooperating with foreign entities on demining. Now we have already deploying operational teams from the Danish Refugee Council. The State Emergency Service has been providing every sort of support to the situation, to that organization for them to start practical demining activities in Ukraine. Work on demining of towns, villages and territories continues, and currently this is one of the priorities for our service. I would like to reassure you that we will make every effort to have the territory of Ukraine cleaned from Russian mines and ordnance in the shortest time possible. And our civilians, our citizens will live in safety. Thank you. Thank you, Oleh. Could you please tell us about any cases where you have to take some, to find some prohibited ordnance used by Russian army against our people? There has been a lot of such cases, as I have already said. Those are even types of ordnance prohibited by international convention. They are used in shelling in almost every oblast, almost every town. It includes cluster-type missiles, which bring huge danger for civilians. Thank you, and I'd like to welcome our second speaker, Oleksandr Tsikra, Head of Engineering Service at the National Guard of Ukraine. Oleksandr, you're welcome. Please tell us a bit about the demining activities by the National Guard of Ukraine. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I suggest that I start with sharing some information about the current situation. Against our Geneva Conventions, Russian Federation continues using igniting cluster phosphorus ordnance. They chaotically install anti-tank and land mines, trigger wires, traps, and improvised explosive devices, IEDs. Also, we have all seen how the Russian troops shelled and destroyed dangerous facilities in Ukraine in terms of radiation and chemical danger, including Kharkiv Institute of Physics and Chemistry with their experimental installation, damaging ammonia tank in the chemical facility in Sumy and Drobizhne and so on. Also, we have to remember about the existence of nuclear, chemical and biological weapons with Russian Federation. Methods of radiation, chemical and biological protection of troops during the full-scale military aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine have been relevant like never before. Since the beginning of 2014 until today, Ukraine has been leading, has been holding a leading position on that sad list of countries most affected by anti-tank mines, and is on top 5 countries in terms of territories contaminated with explosive devices. And we have seen explosions, and as a result some people have died, have been wounded, and some weapons and military equipment has been damaged. I have to inform you I'd like to inform you and maybe a remote audience about National Guard, first of all, because the National Guard is where I serve. According to the law of Ukraine and the National Guard of Ukraine, National Guard is a military unit with law enforcement responsibilities within the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And there have been 22 tasks for the National Guard imposed by law, including 6 military tasks implemented jointly with Ukrainian armed forces and other military units, 15 law enforcement responsibilities, which are typical for security forces, and 1 administrative one. So the National Guard is implementing at the same time military responsibilities, but mostly law enforcement ones. Ensuring implementation of the tasks of the National Guard of Ukraine is based also on engineering units of the National Guard of Ukraine. So in units of the National Guard of Ukraine, we have engineering and demining experts who have been involved in demining, and currently those engineering units of the National Guard of Ukraine provide engineering support for mobility of our troops, restricting mobility of enemy's forces, increasing security of our forces, and general engineering support. The mining teams of the National Guard of Ukraine since 2017 has been found thousands of IDs, including more than 7,000 in 2022. And currently our demining teams have been accompanying the teams of the State Emergency Service and Armed Forces of Ukraine. To summarize, I'd like to say that I verily believe that systemic implementation of all anti-mine measures in Ukraine will result in saving time, money, and human resources, and will help bring more international assistance and help develop capabilities. And all entities involved in anti-mine activities will closely cooperate, will work productively, and you see, it's about teamwork of various agencies. I'm done. Thank you for attention. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer those. Thank you, Oleksandr. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions? Please speak into the microphone and introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Lina Zelenska from Rada TV channel. Does mobilization into the National Guard of Ukraine continue, and whether you have sufficient forces to implement your assignments? And my second question is this, whether the National Guard has been back to full-scale guarding of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and have you finished the mining there? Thank you for our questions. Dear colleagues, I have to emphasize that I'm ready to answer questions which are within my competence, including engineering services, as well as radiation, chemical, and biological protection. I'm ready to discuss those. With regard to completion of demining in territory of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, I can say the following. Sometimes we see that demining has been of emergency nature now, namely it includes identification of locations and elimination of those traces of war. And we understand that now we have to implement priority measures to remove mines and traces of war. Humanitarian demining is about a long time, and it's still ahead. First priority steps for demining, jointly with the State Emergency Service and some same demining units of that service, have already been done. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions with regard to our topic, which is demining of the territory of Ukraine, please speak into the microphone.
From Polish Radio Z. Can you tell us what countries helps you with the demining process?
У вас є навушничок з перекладом. Repeat, please.
Ну, по-перше, відповідаючи на...
First of all, to answer your question, as I already said, there has been a lot of countries who have responded about providing assistance. The State Emergency Service has been working in a very active way with the United States, with Canada, with the United Kingdom, with Denmark, Norway, as well as other countries. So there has been a big range of countries, almost all European countries, and not only European ones, have responded to provide help to us. With regard to your previous question about mobilization of efforts, I'd like to emphasize that our country has made a decision and supported the proposal by the Ministry of Internal Affairs about increasing the number of those pyrotechnic specialists in the state Ukrainian service by 400 people. Currently, the first 60 specialists have already started their 3-week training in one of our centers, and in 3 to 4 weeks they will already start implementing assignments on humanitarian demining of our territories. Thank you. Any more questions? You're welcome. Good morning. I'm Vitaly Golod from Ukrinform. I have a question about this First State Emergency Service. Could you please tell us what are the sites most often mined by occupiers? Streets, buildings, institutions. And the second question is about water sites, whether water sites and coast of rivers and lakes has been mined. Well, look, currently, as I said, the priority area of inspection, not demining, but inspection for explosive devices is towns and villages. We see that the civilian residents, more and more civilian residents return to their homes, which had been occupied by for certain time by Russia's troops. What do we find there? We find grenades with trigger wires. We find improvised explosive devices in those areas. Even children's toys, household items in the buildings and the homes have been mined. We have found a lot of ordnance which were in household equipment, like in microwave ovens, in washing machines, in the furniture. So they are using in a very cynical way those explosive devices against, aimed at traumatizing and killing civilians only. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksandr. Thank you, Oleh. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this extremely important information. And I would like to remind you, dear friends, that at 12 we'll have a special briefing by official representatives of Ukraine's defense forces. Video from that briefing will be published immediately after it's over on our channels.